All right. Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. How's everybody's weekend going? And like preparations for later this week for Thanksgiving for those of us in the States, which I think right now is everybody, but we might have somebody pop on that's not. But so Katie and Bethany, I'll have you guys just introduce yourselves one final time, but also like how's your weekend and how's life and what are you looking forward to this week? Bethany, you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Bethany, at Bethany's Bookshelf. And I've had a pretty good weekend. We did Thanksgiving with my husband's family yesterday. And then I'm an only child. And so we're just doing like my parents and grandma on Thanksgiving Day, but it'll be more low key.
Low key. How many kids do you have, Bethany, again?
5.
5. Wow. So as low key as you can get with 5 children.
Right. Well, so 4 of my kids are my stepkids, and I think they're actually
Okay.
going to be with their mom. So like it'll
Okay.
be like our youngest and us.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow.
They might get to be there for part of the day. We'll see.
I didn't realize that you were a bonus mom. That's cool.
Yeah.
Fun. And Katie, how about you?
Hi, I'm Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and Thanksgiving is usually pretty quiet for us now. Usually it's only me and my parents. My dad's actually working at the missions downtown. He's like the head cook now, so he's doing that. So we're gonna have Thanksgiving the day after. And this past weekend was actually pretty good. I wrote over 1,000 words in one afternoon, so I was very happy about that.
Nice.
So got a little bit done in my novel. So very productive week.
Very nice. I've had a pretty chill weekend. This week past was the anniversary when my brother passed. So there was a couple days in the middle of the week where I just kind of like low key shut down. Like I had a like factory reset. Like I just had a couple days. Thankfully, I had the time and space to do that. I didn't have to work on Wednesday, so I was able to take the time. But then this weekend has been like, okay, now you need to actually do the dishes and take out the trash and like like you have to keep living. You got to keep taking care of your house. So I've spent some time this weekend doing a little bit of that and reorganizing in this room and just kind of getting ready to leave because I'll drive up to New York on Wednesday. It's a short trip and I'll do it again in a month because Thanksgiving is so late this year. So like I go up and then I come back for a couple weeks and then I go up again for Christmas. But I don't want to be here by myself. And I'm sure I could finagle some friends or get an invitation to somebody's house if I wanted to. But I mean, I always have a friend that I could go over if I was here, but yeah, it's going to be a quiet one for us in New York this weekend too. Since Rachel is going to spend half the time with her in-laws now as well, my youngest sister. But let us know in the chat what you're most looking forward to for Thanksgiving. If you're staying around town, if you're visiting someone else, if family's coming over, like what's the plans? And then we will dive into our last section of Adorning the Dark, which has such a pretty cover. It's a bummer that I didn't like this book more. Yeah, we are gonna wrap it up. Let me find where we're gonna go. Chapter 13.
I know I realized I returned the book, so thankfully I was able to get another copy back.
Oh,
It's like, oh no.
very good. So we've got Judy and Jeanette here, and 9 other people, it says, are here. So welcome. Hello. Feel free to say hi if you want to, or just enjoy watching. That's fine too. And those who might be watching later, hello to you as well. Keisha is not going to make it today. So we have Katie and Bethany, and that's fine. We've missed you for the last couple weeks, Katie. So I'm glad that you're here for our finale. The big finale. Yeah, so I guess should we start off with rating and let's go through the chapters first and then we'll do kind of overall final thoughts, like what are you going to rate it, all of that jazz. So I feel like I have to sneeze one more time. Hold on. Woo. I feel like that was a big one. I'm glad I caught the mute. Oh my word. Okay. I feel like in context, chapter 13 probably should have gone a little bit more with the previous section, but that's okay. So chapter 13 is discernment. And yeah, what did we think about, or what did this chapter bring to mind? Honestly, well, go ahead. I'll just say I was a little bit like, who do you think you are? When I was reading the start of this chapter, because he's like talking about good music and good art. I'm like, isn't it all subjective? Like, just because you're a musician, someone handed a teeny bopper CD and you're like, oh, great, now we have to listen to this crap music. Like, if she enjoys it, then isn't that kind of the point? Like, I understand where he was going as the chapter went on, but at first I was like, oh, this is a little bit condescending and like, what's the word? Oh man, it starts with a P.
Pretentious.
Pretentious.
That's exactly what I thought when I was reading it. Like in the beginning. And then like he hits a point where he's like, this can get out of hand.
Yeah.
And like recognized it in himself. And I'm like, okay. Like I feel like half the time he's like being kind of like reflective and aware. And then,
yeah.
And then he's like, but I had that same feeling at first. I was like, what in the world?
Yeah, it's like I enjoyed some of those songs growing up.
Yeah, like the teeny bopper girl groups, like they serve a purpose. And they work just as hard at their craft as other musicians and bands, right? Like, I don't know. I found his tone a little off-putting at the beginning of this chapter. I mean, it is good to seek excellence and what is true, but like style is such a subjective thing. Like, I don't know. Is this the one where he kind of goes off about worship music? Like how the tone of everything changed and everybody was starting. I think that's coming up. But
yeah, I don't remember where that was, but it was I had similar feelings at first when you started talking about that. I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah. I feel like maybe I was just ready to be done with this book. But in these last few chapters, I'm like, I do not like your tone, sir. I just kind of lost a little bit of, not respect, but like, I don't know. I wasn't finding as much to pull from as I did in earlier sections. But I mean, he does say a few things that I agree with, of course.
I think he just grew up with a certain sound.
Yeah.
And so hearing like different things come up or like they're not as, moving. Because like worship songs in the 90s, I kind of agree. I wasn't really a fan. But I mean, it's just
I was in college, but I was in high school and college in the 90s and I loved all of that. Like I loved it. Both, so many of the people that he talks about, I know, like I went to Caedmon's Call was my favorite for ages, and he talks about them later on. And I learned about Jill Phillips and Bebo Norman and all of these people that he talked about opening for Caedmon's Call. I'm like, I know, I loved them all.
Alison Krauss is one of mine and my dad's favorites. Is Alison Krauss. Alison Krauss is one of my dad's and my favorite.
Oh, fun. But I just feel like he even in this chapter, he says on page 136, the key is to delight in what you find delightful more than you bemoan what isn't. Nobody likes feeling belittled. I'm like, maybe you need to just take another look at these chapters and the way that you're talking about this other music, because it's a little bit belittling. at times. Not across the board, but at times.
I feel like it was very confusing. Like, I don't know. Like, it's almost like you make up your mind, or are you just, I don't know. Because then there was one part that I marked on 139 where he was just like, in the beginning, just make something, even if it's not great. And so I'm like,
yeah.
So which is it? Or
Yeah.
how are you? I don't know.
Yeah, and then he writes that note on saying, like, don't make bad music or something on that woman's CD.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And then the other guy was like, write the bad stuff too.
Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, there's something earlier on 134 talking about art in general and like in comparison to like junk food and healthy food. Like junk food is not always bad, but if that's all that you have, it's not going to sustain you. It's not going to provide the life that you need. And so he's kind of comparing that to like good art and like stuff that might be fun in the moment, but ultimately isn't. He said it's better to seek out that which edifies, enlightens, and strengthens, and to do more and more of that over time. And so I agree with that. Like we do want stuff, but who's to say, like, if I put it in the book world, right? Like the reasons why we read are so different from person to person. And so to say that somebody who reads all literary fiction or these high quality, like beautifully written sentences, and somebody who enjoys a popcorn thriller or a rom-com, like there's different reasons to read, and one isn't automatically better than the other. I mean, at the same time, like I've read stuff that's very poorly written and yet I know that there are people who love that too. So I just feel like it is, Judy, so subjective, and it's just tricky. It's a tricky road, like line to walk when you start calling something better than something else or higher quality when it is perceived as so subjective.
Mm-hmm. It's so much harder to measure than like junk food, even though we've gone back and forth on what's good for us and what isn't when it comes to food too. But I feel like there's not a way to measure it really, other than like grammar standards. I don't know. But as far as like the ideas, or I don't know.
I think the idea of discernment is a good one. You need to know yourself and what do you need at this moment in time, and be willing to DNF the book or to trash the chapter that you just wrote because you know it's not fulfilling what you know what I mean? Like there is a level of discernment that I think is healthy and good. I think when I can't be discerning for someone else. And I feel like that's kind of what he was a little bit in here. Like he's trying to raise his kids to like a certain thing and whatever, and that's fine and that's good. That's the choice you're making, but you can't across the board say if you're not listening to blah 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 X, Y, and Z, then it's just junk food.
Yeah.
The equivalent of junk. You know, I don't know. I feel like it is good to be discerning, both in what you create and what you put in. But when you start determining that for other people, I don't know. It's tricky.
Towards the end, I feel like he starts to talk about like it lasting kind of. That's what I got from it. I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but that made a little bit of sense, even though I feel like we still don't always know like what's gonna last, because some really, I don't know.
Right, we don't know that. Right.
Yeah.
I did like the story of his neighbor? Bob and Darlene. And Bob, they had been married for 50 something years, and Bob was dying basically and had written a poem for his wife and asked Andrew to put it to music, and he did. And it was beautiful. Like he's like, it wasn't like you're not going to see his poetry in a book 100 years from now, but for his wife, like that was the most meaningful treasure that she now had. So I think I like that. I liked that story. Like, And there is something beautiful about something that has lasted. Like when you hear
Yeah.
a piece of music that's really old that can still bring tears to your eyes, or read a poem that was written. That's why we still enjoy classics, and people still enjoy
Mhm.
reading those older classics because they've stood the test of time to a degree. And whether it's nostalgia or whatever it is that it keeps bringing us back, there is a level of I had a whole class on this in college called literary criticism. And like it was my senior sem too. And we had to like what makes a classic a classic. And so we read books that were classics, but then we read books that were written at the same time as those. Like, why did these ones
Hmm.
stand the test of time and these other ones not? And so we had to, and it was horrible. It was it was the worst class. I had to read a lot of junk, like Moby Dick. But but it's a good question. Like, what does make something stand the test of time? But if that's your goal, and he says in there, like, he's not always interested in making a name for himself. But when he reads a poem that's 400 years old and it like moves him, like he's like, I want to make something that will do that for somebody years down the road. So I understand that desire for quality, but his tone across the board wasn't sitting well. All right, then we get into community for the next two chapters. Art nourishes community, and then community nourishes art. And reading about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, I really want to get to Myth Makers. I don't know if I'm going to get to it before the end of the year, but I really want to read that book about the friendship between Lewis and Tolkien because I just think it's cool.
Buddy read next year for the channel.
I know that might be a fun one to do as a group read. Give it a little time to make it more easily accessible because it's so new still. Oh, this is a good point, Judy. Art is also cultural. Asymmetric design was unknown to European art until the exposure to Eastern cultures. Yeah, it's so true. Different cultures have different like values in what they find beautiful and what stands the test of time here in America is going to be different from other places in the world. And that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, right? Like that's the beauty of going to another culture and seeing their art and hearing their music. And yeah, it's so cool. It is so subjective.
I loved his talk about the lock-ins. I think I've only been to one at my church. And yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm the type of person where like, I like to go to sleep. I don't like to stay up at night. So like, you hear like everybody talking around, you're like, I just want to go to bed. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I was a youth leader for a long time and I have been to many lock-ins, both as a teenager myself when I was young and then as a youth leader. They're the worst. They're the worst. Like nothing good happens at 3 a.m. with a bunch of teenagers who are like hyped up on sugar and caffeine.
Yeah.
And also really tired at the same time. Like, oh, such a bad mix. I don't think I underlined anything in this chapter.
I like how he found a friend though, even though he hated lock-ins and he was like, fine, I'll do it for the $60 or whatever. But he ended up finding a really great friend.
Oh yeah, out of
that
it.
played music with
right?
him. I'm like, even the things you don't want to do, come to find out that it was worth it and God wanted you there for a reason.
I loved I did right at the end of this chapter, he kind of has a little paragraph where he defines what community is to him. On 159, towards the bottom, he says, that's community. They look you in the eye and remind you who you are in Christ. They reiterate your calling when you forget what it is. They step into the garden and help you weed it, help you to grow something beautiful. Like that's a really nice picture of community. People standing with you and thick and thin.
I also really like the story of how they earned $600. They got their money for rent and then they lost it. And he's like, it's not going to be there when we go back to the gas station. And it was there for 4 hours.
That's
A
amazing.
bright envelope too. It wasn't like a brown envelope. It was a bright colored envelope, and it was still
Yeah.
there. Like that's God. He knew you needed the money, and he was like, nobody touch this.
Yeah.
I liked on 158 after he was talking about getting dropped, and then how the guy gave him the bone for the book.
Yeah.
And anyway, and then where he said, it never feels good to fail, even if I knew all the Sunday school answers I actually believed, by the way. The truth was, a bunch of people who believed in my music did a lot of work and put a lot of money. Anyway, I just liked that he was just saying, like, yeah, even if you know that God has something, he has a plan through even the failures, it still hurts and affects people when you fail.
Yeah.
I did. So after had my little frustrations with that last chapter, the rest of them I liked more, I feel like, because he was kind of just going into like storytelling mode about his life. And I like that part.
Yeah.
More than him like talking about how to tell what's good and not.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I really love Caedmon's Call. So I loved that they're the ones that kind of gave him a big break right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And without even hearing his music, said he could open for them. Like, that's crazy. Because they were a big band in the 90s. Like they were, I've seen them 4 or 5 times in concert because I loved them. Like, I was a fan. I feel like Mercy Me is like a version of Caedmon's Call, but it was like that folksy sound. Oh my gosh, I loved Caedmon's Call. I had all their CDs. And their opening acts were always fantastic. Like I learned about so many other people because of who Caedmon's Call had as their opening acts.
Yeah, that's really cool that they like put like unknown people as their openers and like wanting to support other artists as well.
Yeah. And that was kind of what sparked. So this whole chapter is about art nourishing community. And so because of this connection that so many people had with Caedmon's Call, like it turned into community that we're going to talk about in the next chapter too. Like a lot of these singer-songwriters were getting dropped. Was this the chapter we talked about? 9/11 happened, and then Napster was a big thing, and people were just like ripping off music off the internet and all that stuff, and how that really affected all of these smaller artists who weren't huge, and so it kind of helped them to develop. That's how they began to develop the Rabbit Room. And what was the other? I think it's in the next chapter, but it helped them to find each other. We were looking for commiseration, for solidarity, for encouragement, for tangible ways we could help one another. In a city full of songwriters, we had found kinship, not because our music was similar, but because our callings were. So I thought that was kind of cool that they were all kind of in the same boat, and it helped them to connect with each other.
And then he got the literary agent. Like he was like, hey, I know a guy who would like to read your work without reading his work. And he's like, nah, like, I don't want to do it. But I'm like, well, now it's a TV show.
Yeah, right. And then this is where he does get on his little soapbox about worship music right at the end of this chapter. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I don't know why, but sometime in the early 2000s, people started going bonkers for worship music, as if that's a bad thing. Like,
yeah, no, I know.
Andrew, what are we saying here?
Yeah.
Oh, Chrissy showed up. Hi, Chrissy. I like how he encourages people not to listen to their inner critic, to have faith in God and to the purpose of their talent. Yeah, he does that often throughout the book. Kind of remember your calling. Napster was the wild, wild west, right? Crazy. They used to have those like big warnings when you'd watch a DVD or whatever, like, warning, do not duplicate. And yet my little brothers, all the time, they would try to like to get me to like set up all this stuff on my phone that would like steal. I'm like, stop it. I don't want that. I don't want that on my phone. No, you can watch any movie, Krista, anywhere, any movie, anywhere. I'm like, listen, I can't. Oh my word. Too funny. Oh, he even says that they don't have personality. I was like, Andrew. Ugh. But I mean, I get at that time it was tough for singer-songwriter because it's a different vibe than all this worship music coming out. But I don't think worship music is bad. It's just different.
I think he like waits to the next chapter to also say that. Like, actually, worship music isn't bad.
Yeah.
But
I love it. Jill Phillips is another girl that I learned about because of listening to Caedmon's Call. Man, I'm gonna have to go back and like make a playlist of like college faves and put some Evo Norman on there and Jill Phillips and Caedmon's Call for sure. My word. But I love she came up with the Square Peg Alliance. This is one more example of community that they built around this time. Whenever I was feeling discouraged, I had friends who gave me courage. If I wanted to quit, someone was there to look me in the eye and tell me my songs mattered. And to them, if not to the masses, art nourishes community. Stay tuned for our final thoughts, Chrissy. Stay tuned. Yeah, it has hit big with a lot of people. I don't think it hit big with any of us.
I don't think so.
It has some moments that are beautiful and nice and encouraging, but yeah, stay tuned. All right. Chapter 15 kind of is the same idea, just flip-flopped. Community nourishes art. And this is where he talks about the rabbit room and that other
like event
retreat type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it was called.
I feel like how I was saying it in my head is not correct. So
it was a weird name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I want to say like Hutch moved.
Yeah, something like that. I forget what it was called.
Where's that?
I don't know where it was, but so this chapter, community nourishes art. What stands out? Oh, the first thing I underlined, I disagreed with, but I think this is a product of its time too. When did this book come out? 2019. 2019. Because he says community doesn't really exist online. And I'm like, I tend to disagree with that. And I think it just speaks to like what a special place BookTube is in general. And I'm sure there are other pockets of community as well online. And I think even within BookTube, there are pockets where there isn't community. But I think each of us has found a level of community that has stemmed from online. Of course, meeting together in person is always adds another layer to that. But 100%, I have found community with people that I've never met in person.
Yeah. I thought of that too. I thought a lot of BookTube when I was reading this chapter.
Yeah, same.
But I did think like yeah, there's still that desire to meet people in person and like,
Yeah.
exciting, but it's pretty amazing that we get to just do this.
Yeah.
That we get to see our faces. And so,
Yeah.
and I don't know what time period he was talking. Like, I know that this was in 2019, but I don't know if his like online community was as advanced. I don't remember if we knew the time frame, but I love that he did the rabbit room. Like, I think that's neat.
Yeah.
Or them, whoever collaborated to do that.
Hutchmoot. There, I just saw it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Hutchmoot. Yeah, I think it's cool that they did develop this community from all of these artists who were kind of struggling. Let's see. Oh, I liked the idea too that when he was talking to Wendell Berry and he's like, "Oh yeah, I read your book and then I went and bought a house in the country." And the wife was like, "Oh, you're another one of those." But Wendell Berry's point was like, "No, the point of it is to love where you are, to learn to love where you are." And that whole idea of the community, well, he says it in 171, the community that you've been given is the one you have to learn to love. It's going to look different from Nashville. Let it speak to you, just like the song you're trying to write. Let it become what it wants to become. Serve the work, remember? But I love that idea that we've been placed where we are for a reason. And so if we spend all our time wishing we were closer like this group of people over here, or that we want to become a part of this community over here, then we're going to miss out on the community, which is where God placed us at this moment in time for this season. Not to say that it's a forever season, but for now, this is where we are. How can we develop a stronger community and learn to love aspects of where we're at right now? I thought that was a good point. Not easy. Not an easy thing to do, but
I also liked how he said he didn't want to admit that he looked in Kentucky first for homes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I looked there first, but there was nothing. So
well, I liked the Field of Dreams reference on the next page. He's like, I happen to think if you start doing the work of joyfully, diligently speaking light into your community with your gifting, people will show up, just like in Field of Dreams. People will surprise you with their gifts, and you'll see how the friendships are augmenting everyone's talent in one way or another. So if you just start bringing what you have to the table to your community, then you'll start to see other people filling in and doing. I love that.
I liked how when he was talking about the term creative as a noun, and then how he was talking about Tolkien saying that that one of the ways we bear the image of our creator is that we're compelled to create. And so I don't know, I liked that, how like, even though some parts of this, since I'm not like a musician or an author, but that we all are creators. Like, and I don't know if I marked it, but when he was talking about his wife and how she like creates a home and hospitality and raising her kids and all that. I like that part.
Yeah. This is a good point too, Judy, that this is pre-COVID. 2019 is pre-COVID. So during COVID, that kind of changed how online was for a lot of people, right? Because school went online, the churches went online, like everything went online because of necessity of not being able to go out and about. And so it did kind of change the level of interaction online. And so, yeah, even it's so funny because 2019 doesn't feel like that long ago, but when you think of it as pre-COVID, you're like, oh, okay, so it is very different.
Yeah.
The online side of things. And yeah, finding community online is more normal, for sure, more normal than it was before. Yeah. And still a necessity for a lot of people. Like, Yeah. I know book clubs that started during that time are still meeting online. Like there's just a lot of things that have changed because of that, because of that year of our lives.
There was a part at the end of the chapter where he talks about I'm a creative, I know I am, but then getting that nudge from the Holy Spirit saying that's being prideful, and so he knows that he's got some work to do on his part.
Yeah. Well, and I just like the idea of not being isolated in whatever it is that you're creating too. Like the community is a big aspect of it, both in encouraging you to continue with it and in creating what it is that you're meant to create. Like, I think that's what those 2 chapters were ultimately about, right? Like art nourishes, art brings people together, and then also those people can help us to produce art.
Yeah, I just reread a line that says, now there are conferences for creatives and it just won't go away. And I think, yes, book events.
Yep. Yep. Makes me want to look up the Rabbit Room online. I forgot to do that. I also, I want to listen to all these people's music again, and I want to look up the Rabbit Room. Okay, Home is Real, chapter 16.
I think this is one of my favorite chapters because I liked hearing more about like him traveling and finding more of his relatives in Sweden. I really like that, how he actually did find some relatives there. And I'm like, I always wanted to do that because my dad's side of the family is from Wales and Italy. So I'd love to go to both those places and see if we have relatives. It would just be so cool to be like, hey, we're like fifth cousins on my dad's side. Or
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool that he found his great grandfather's house, like searching for the berries, and the guide like not speaking English, but he's like, "Come on, follow me." Nope, this isn't the right berry patch. Keep going.
Yeah, that was a cool story. I loved the paragraph on 183 after he talked about Sweden, just that idea of longing for a place where we belong and everything. But then he's talking about hoping that his songs will remain even after he's gone. But then he says, I want you, dear reader, to remember that one holy way of mending the world is to sing, to write, to paint, to weave new worlds. Because the seed of your feeble yet faithful work, I loved that, feeble yet faithful work, fell to the ground, died, and rose again. What Christ has done through you will call forth praise from lonesome travelers long after your name is forgotten. They will know that someone lived and loved here. Whoever they are, whoever they were, they'll think they belong to God. I just loved that. I thought that was really beautifully written. And that idea of feeble yet faithful, like he's recognizing, like, we're just doing the best we can out here, being as faithful as we can to the calling that we've been given, and trusting that whatever seeds we're planting through it will grow because of what Christ has done.
I think it's really encouraging throughout the whole book. And sometimes it got a little much where I was like, oh man, but how he's just really honest about, and I think that's why some of it is like he's contradicting himself because he's just being honest with how he feels about things. So like when he's talking about being restless and how God was just saying, write about it, like tell that story, just do it. anyway, so some of those parts I liked, even though they could be frustrating sometimes, but that he was being honest about it.
Yeah.
About his struggle with pride and his all that. So
I do appreciate that. He didn't hold back on that reality of those things. Yeah.
And then right after what you were saying earlier on 183,
I underlined like the whole end of the page. So read it because it's so good. Like I just love how it all ended. I thought it was a wonderful ending.
This is why the enemy wants you to think you have no song to write, no story to tell, no painting to paint. He wants to quiet you. So sing, let the world by which the Creator made you fill your imagination. Guide your pen, lead you from note to note until a melody is strung together like a glimmering constellation in the clear sky. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor too by making worlds and works of beauty that blanket the earth like flowers. Let your homesickness keep you always from spiritual slumber. I really liked that part. I liked that he ended it like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And until the kingdom comes in its fullness, bend your will to the joyful, tearful telling of its coming. Write about that, and never stop. Like I thought it was such a good way to end what I didn't like, a book that I didn't love, but I loved the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was alluding to community being global. Yeah, that's the joy of BookTube, right? We all have opportunity to know people. Like I have places to stay if I ever visit Australia, right? Like I never could have said that 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Yeah, it's so like literally people that I would want to visit and see in person who live in the other side of the world. Like that's crazy. That's community. But yeah, I love how he ended it. And I think that's the idea of this whole book is that we have, like you said, like we're all creatives because we're made by a creator God, and we all have a unique perspective and calling, and our creativity might look different from person to person, but just do the work and like do it to the best of our ability. Like continue to learn and grow, but don't wait until we've learned it all to start. Like just start. Just do it. That's what I tell people that who ask about like, should I start a BookTube or how do I do it? I'm like, you just do it. Like you just start. You will learn and grow as you go. You'll get more comfortable or you won't, and you will figure it out that's not for you, and that's fine. But like you just got to do it. And I feel like that with a lot of art. I feel like that with watercolor, with writing. Like you just have to start somewhere and keep practicing and keep doing it, sharing with others, allowing feedback, growing, learning. Yeah. Now I'm thinking I might have to change my rating. I'm not
I know. It's so funny. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah. Speaking of his music and impact, Jacqueline says Andrew Peterson wrote "Is He Worthy," which became popular after Chris Tomlin covered it. I love Peterson's version of the song best. Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know that. I think that's the one that I'm thinking of that I love.
It's new, isn't it?
I love that song.
Yeah. It's not new, but yeah. When we first started this, I did like put on a playlist that I think I link in the description every week since then, but I do like his music. I do think he's very talented. And it's very nostalgic sound for me because I loved that folksy singer-songwriter. You can hear all the words, you know what they're singing. Like that's my favorite. It's still to this day my favorite kind of music because I like to be able to sing along. I like to be able to like know the words and be able to sing along or learn the words and hear what they are. But okay, so final, like what are you gonna rate it and your overall impressions? Katie, you're probably the freshest. You read a lot of it in the last few days.
I did. I read like half to 3/4 in like 2 days. I gave it 2.5 stars, rounding up to 3. I honestly thought it was like when you like was messaging everybody saying, do you still want to do the buddy read? And I was like, I don't know, I have so much stuff coming on in November. But then like I saw like something that had to do with writing, and I'm like, oh, I need to read that because I'm writing my novel right now. And having that mindset, I feel like I didn't get much out of it because it was more geared toward the music writing versus his book writing. So that I think that's where my mind was at the moment.
Yeah. Bethany, how about you?
So I think I'm just now opening half stars in my rating world, which is stressing me out. Because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because I feel like I'm never going to give 5 stars if I have a 4.5 option. And I give quite a bit. Anyway, that's a side tangent on my internal struggle. But I think it's going to help me here because I think I'm going to rate it 3.5. Because I was thinking 3 for a long time. But then there's just moments where I feel really like inspired, but also just enjoyed it, like learning about him because I like memoirs. I think he's interesting and different. And I'm currently reading the Wing Feather Saga. So it's like all of those things. There were times where I was really enjoying it. So 3.5 is what I'm going to land on.
Nice. And I also am just new to the world of half stars. I already stress a lot because ratings are so subjective and ultimately don't matter, right? But I'm like, what best fits my mood or whatever, my thoughts about this book, and it's a lot of stress, and it doesn't really matter. So I need to stop stressing about it and just like pick a number, right? Because who cares? You still have like, because we have this outlet, we can still talk about what we liked and didn't like about a book.
Right.
Number is like pointless ultimately. That's my thought about ratings, but I use them. I wish Goodreads did have half stars now because I also, Katie, think I'm giving this one 2.5, rounded up to 3. Because yeah, there was too much of the book that didn't connect with me. There were a lot of, so I think 2 is like, it was okay. Right. 3 is I liked it. 2 is it was okay. And I feel like I'm in the middle of there. There was parts that I liked, but the majority of it was this, it was okay. It was okay. So I think, I don't know. I think my expectations of it were too high going in because I know I've heard from a handful of people who really loved it. And so it like, I was like, yes, this is going to be so good. And I wanted more of that. What does it say? What's the part that I wanted more of? Making something beautiful in a broken world can be harrowing work and it can't be done alone. I'm like, I wanted a little more of like being a light in the dark. Like the theological side of it, the Christian living life part of it, and not as much about him making music. And so I think that was just a fault of my own expectations, which I can't help that. Like, that's just what I was thinking. So 2.5 for me as well, rounded up to 3. And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Those of you in the comments who finished, there's a handful of you. I know Judy and Jeanette, I did see that you gave it a 2 on Goodreads, if you're still here. Manage your expectation. I think that would help. If you go in with lower expectations, you might be pleasantly surprised and really enjoy it. And just know it's a lot more memoir. I think that I wasn't expecting a memoir at all.
Yeah, neither was I.
So I think it helped to change when we first started it, and I realized that to change my expectation to that. And I think for me, it was like timing and the fact that I read it basically Sunday afternoon after church, like in this little window, these chapters. I don't know, something about that I think helped me. To just sit and kind of enjoy it, even though sometimes I was bored.
Yeah, that I was too sometimes. So it's okay. There were definitely takeaways, but I will not be keeping this on my shelf. I feel bad now that I underlined in it but it's fine because my church is eventually, my friend is setting up a little free library at my church. This will be a perfect book to go in the little free library at my church. So I already have a bag started of like church friendly. Doesn't have to be all Christian fiction or Christian whatever, just stuff that you wouldn't be embarrassed to hand to somebody at church. Be like, here, read this. I wasn't expecting it to be so much memoir, and I'm not into music at all. So I went in not knowing who he was in the music world. That's fair. And then generally a 3 with special moments. Yeah. Well, good. What was wonderful about this was getting to connect with you guys in our community online. reading books and discussing them, and having that faith element, I think, is really special because it makes it different from any other book club. So I really appreciate you guys taking time on your Sundays, Katie and Keisha, if you're still here, and Bethany, taking time out of your day to join me on screen. And those of you who've been in the comments every week or popping in here and there, thank you so much for joining in. I will have an announcement in the end of December, probably later in the month. I don't know, because I'm not ready yet to let you know what all the books will be for next year, but I will probably do quarterly again. I think this worked really well for me to do it 4 times, like every 3 months, to have another one. And I already have one that I know I'm going to do. I have to just choose the others and figure out what they're going to be. So there will be an announcement later on before the end of the year. So February will be the next one. And I do too, Chrissy. I love these kind of discussions. I know. Perfect. And Jeanette, you're going to join me on screen. That's my goal. I'm going to write it in my goals list. Jane Reads joins Krista for Christian read-alongs. Chrissy, I would love to have you back on too. I know you kind of do with Dia and Tiffany, which I'm so thrilled that they do it as well. Theirs are a little more classic, and I've done some classic authors. Actually, one of the ones I'm thinking of is a little bit older, but it's okay. It's fun. We'll see. And then every once in a while you get one that doesn't hit as strongly, but it's okay. It's okay. It still has good discussion. So thank you so much for joining in. We're going to wrap that up and stay tuned till next year. I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday, wonderful Thanksgiving. Even if you don't have a big party, it's just a good reminder to be thankful for all the things that we have to be thankful for, because there's always something. We're here, we're alive, we're chatting. So enjoy your Thanksgiving, enjoy your week, and happy reading. And yeah, thanks for joining in. You guys are the best.